Genesis 3, verse 15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Commentary, verse 15. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between whom there had been so much familiarity, not only while they had the preceding discourse together, but before. For it is conjectured by some that she took a particular liking to that creature, and was delighted with it, and laid it perhaps in her bosom, adorned her neck with its windings, or made it a bracelet for her arms. And being a peculiar favorite, the devil made choice of it as his instrument to deceive her. And now being beguiled hereby, she conceived in antipathy against it, and which is become natural between the serpent and man. Man abhors the sight of a serpent, and the serpent the sight of man. And the spittle of a man and the gall of a serpent are poison to each other. And this antipathy is observed to be stronger in the female sex. And this was not only true of a particular serpent that deceived Eve, and of the particular woman Eve deceived by him, but of every serpent and of every woman in successive ages, and is also true of Satan and the Church of God in all ages, between whom there is an impalpable and an irreconcilable hatred and a perpetual war. And between thy seed and her seed, the posterity of Eve, mankind, and the production of serpents, between whom the antipathy still continues, and mystically the evil angels and also wicked men, called serpents, and a generation of vipers on the one hand, and the people of God on the other, the seed of the church, the latter of which are hated and persecuted by the former, and so it has been ever since this affair happened, and especially by the seed of the woman may be meant the Messiah. The word seed sometimes signifies a single person, Genesis 4:25, and particularly Christ, Galatians 3:16. And he may, with great propriety, be so called, because he was made of a woman and not begotten by man, and who assumed not a human person, but a human nature, which is called the holy thing, and the seed of Abraham, as here the seed of the woman, as well as it expresses the truth of his incarnation and the reality of his being man, and who, as he has been implacably hated by Satan and his angels and by wicked men, so he has opposed himself to all them that hate and persecute his people. It shall bruise thy head. The head of a serpent creeping on the ground is easily crushed and bruised, of which it is sensible therefore to be careful to hide and cover it. In the mystical sense, it or he, which is one of the names of God, H-U, Psalms 102:27, and here of the Messiah, the eminent seed of the woman, shall bruise the head of the old serpent, the devil, that is, destroy him and all his principalities and powers, break and confound all his schemes and ruin all his works, crush his whole empire, strip him of his authority and sovereignty, and particularly of his powers over death and his tyrants over the bodies and souls of men, all which was done by Christ when he became the incarnate and suffered and died, Hebrews 2:14. And thou shalt bruise his heel. And the heel of man being what the serpent can most easily come at, as at the heel of horses, which it bites, Genesis 49:17, and which agrees with that insidious creature as Aristotle described it. This, as it refers to the devil, may relate to the persecution of the members of Christ on earth. In stagnant by Satan, or to some slight trouble he should receive from him in the days of his flesh by his temptations in the wilderness and agony with him in the garden, or rather by the heel of Christ, is meant his human nature, which is his inferior and lowest nature, and who was in it frequently exposed to the insults, temptations, and persecutions of Satan, and was at last brought to a painful and accursed death, though by dying he got an entire victory over him and all his enemies, and obtained salvation for his people. The Targums of Jonathan and Jerusalem paraphrase this passage of the days of the Messiah and of the health and salvation in them. What is here delivered out in a way of threatening to the serpent the devil, carries in it a kind imitation of grace and goodwill to fallen men and laid a foundation for hope of salvation and happiness. Reference seems to be had to this passage in Psalms 40 verse 7 in the volume, in the first roll, as in the Greek version. At the head, in the beginning of the book, it is written of me to do thy will, O my God.